Sorry. Oh, goodness. I know exactly what I sound like. You should hear what Renee sounds like. He's got a cold.
Sucks.
It sucks, yes. And he's blaming his boss at work because his boss has been dealing with the same thing. And what did you call his children?
Petri dishes.
Human petri dishes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two children. Yeah, they're human petri dishes. I know. I raised two of those petri dishes myself. Oh my goodness. Hi guys. We're off to a good start. We were talking about Renee's head cold. He's not happy. He's a grumpy Gus when he's sick. He's not a happy camper.
I don't like being sick.
He doesn't like being sick. Anyway, so he started with a scratchy throat last night. And then got up this morning sounding like Gravel Gertie. So he's not happy. And he said he probably got it from me. And I said, well, I don't have a cold. I have allergies. I've been like this since the end of March. So he's not happy. But he'll get over it.
Yeah.
If he's anything like his father, he'll be, one day coming, one day here, one day gone. 3 days is the limit for these two when they get sick. That's it. And they don't often get sick, thankfully. Oh no, the man cold. I gotta tell you guys, I have been blessed when it comes to that. Neither of my guys have man colds. They don't get man colds. I have the opposite problem. Mine could be dying of anything, and I will. It could be sepsis. It could be tuberculosis, and they will be going Tylenol, and I'll be fine. Total opposite of the man cold. Oh, yeah, Donna, tell me about it. If it's not asthma or allergies, something I eat's trying to kill me. So I'm, but I'm still here. I'm still on the good side of the grass, so it's all good. Linda Safranco says, hi, Renee. I hope you feel better soon. Yeah, most men are grumpy when sick. Women just work it out. Oh no, I'm grumpy when I'm sick, and I have to be left the hell alone. I am not a good patient. I don't like being sick. It stops me from doing stuff, and I don't like that. It makes me very grumpy. I'm not a good sick person. Sounds like my husband. Yes. Linda's husband comes home from what, 3 days in the hospital and goes out and he's cutting the grass. It's
Things
like,
gotta be done.
yeah, no stuff's got to be done, but there's a limit. But yeah, everybody's like, no, it's not fun being sick. But yeah, he'll bounce. He always does.
Yeah.
Thankfully, he's not a pain in the butt when he's sick, which is a very good thing.
No, I'm going to keep the comment to myself.
Good idea.
No, there's nothing derogatory about the Jewish penicillin.
Yeah. No, chicken soup. I'll make you a pot of chicken soup. You'll be fine.
Oh, with the stars.
With the stars, yes. Stelchen soup. Eh? You're how old? Shh. Everybody likes to have like mama's chicken soup when they're
Jewish penicillin.
Jewish penicillin. Hey, you can't deny it works.
No, it does work.
It does work. So hey, hope everybody's having a good Saturday morning. Renee and I have been kind of torturing each other this morning, a little bit.
Apparently there's puppies.
Oh yes, our local shelter, our favorite local shelter, they got a rather large influx of puppy dogs. And a lot of them are needing both veterinary care and they're going to need a lot of food. So we're sending out a goodie box this week to our local shelter to kind of help them out a little bit with feeding all of these puppies. So if you guys are feeling generous, don't forget the puppy fund. We're hoping to really help them out again. That's a lot of puppies. Like it's something like 62 puppies. It was crazy. Yeah, it's 62, and they're dividing them up against
Other shelters.
with a couple of the other shelters in the area. It's a lot of puppies. So yeah, it was from, I think, several seizures.
Yeah.
Not just, and obviously not local, because I don't think we have that many local, but they do have local puppy mills from time to time. And when they shut them down, the puppies are all divided amongst the various shelters. So you don't have one shelter with no puppies and no dogs, and one that doesn't have enough resources to look after them all. So,
Judy
yeah.
Thacker kicked it off.
Oh, Judy, thank you so much. Hello, Monica. Thanks for joining us. You know, Cheryl, I can't wait till this allergy season is done, and it just makes it worse because it's been so hot and so humid, and of course we have the air conditioning on all the time, so that doesn't help. So between the air conditioning and allergies, yeah, we've got at least 4, maybe 5 kittens in our boat. Their eyes are open, wobbling around and mewing like crazy. Hope the mama comes back. Oh my goodness.
Good.
How do we send money for the puppies? If you're in the chat, if you look at the bottom of the chat, there should be like a, what is it, a little dollar sign?
I think it's it depends on what device they're on.
Yeah.
It on iPhone and iPad, it's going to be like a little dollar sign. That's
Yep.
going to be your super chat option. And I don't know what it is for desktop.
I don't either. I'm very rarely on desktop, but there are a series of little buttons at the bottom of the chat window.
Hey, look at
And
that,
it's
I got
super
the
chat.
open here.
There you go. So at the bottom of the super chat window, there's a variety of them. Oh, Sue, thank you so much. $40 from Sue. You guys are great. You guys are awesome.
Gail
Thank you so much.
Wolseley,
What did Gail do?
$100.
Oh my goodness, Gail, thank you. Best use of spare cash. I appreciate you, Gail, very much. Thank you. Our local shelters are, especially during the summer, it just seems like there's far more puppies and far more kittens. So, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And so we really do try to help them out as much as possible, and we couldn't do that without your help. So thank you very much. Very, very much. Oh my goodness. So with that in mind, that's amazing. It's either that or art supplies. I agree. I couldn't think of 2 better things to spend my money on.
Like a drug habit.
No. Awesome.
It's good thing I don't have a microphone today.
It's probably a good thing you don't have a microphone. All right, guys. The reason that we're here today is not to empty your wallets. Today we're going to be painting farm fresh pumpkins. I'm in the mood for fall. I can't wait for fall weather. I know that all of you summer people are just glorying in this warm weather. Us fall and winter people, we are not okay because it's way too hot. I love the fall. It's my favorite time of year. I love everything about it, the cooler weather, and especially the colors. I love all of those fall colors. Vibrant pops of orange and wonderful reds and deep browns, and it's just great. So I was feeling a little nostalgic the other day, and this is what I came up with, was this Farm Fresh pumpkins. I really love the color palette in this. Lots of those autumnal colors, and this one is a lot of fun to paint. So if you guys are ready to get started on Farm Fresh pumpkins, so am I. See if I did that smoothly. Oh, look at that. I actually managed to get it right first time out. Before we get started, though, I want to say hi to a few people. To Leanne Washatka. Hello, Leanne. And Cindy Nezazon. And who else is in here? Cheryl D'Agostino. Hello. Deb Pels. Pauline Tupo. Hello. Good morning from New Mexico. Wow. And Kathy McAllister. Hello, sweetie. Cindy Braden. Hello, Cindy. And Peg. Nice to see you here. And Diane. Hello, Linda. Mwah. Good to see you. Eileen Miller. Hello. And Becca Buckner. And Kelly Davis. Oh, my goodness. Everybody is here. You guys are awesome. So today we're going to be painting this one. This just has a mixture of some really fun fall themes in it. I like the oak leaves. I try to stay away from maple leaves. They always seem to pop up at this time of year, and they're everywhere. But I really love these oak leaves because they're never just one color. They're all sorts of colors. And then, of course, we got to have pumpkins. You got to have that bit of blue and some bright orange. And I have to have a sunflower. I love sunflowers; are my favorite. So, and I'm not done yet. I got a bunch more sunflower stuff coming up because I'm obsessed with sunflowers. So this is the one that we're doing today. Lots of color, lots of textures. What I really like about this is this matches up very nicely with the other Farm Fresh projects that we've done. Even though the font is a little bit different, I really like this cohesive thing. So it works well with a lot of that Farm Fresh projects, like the eggs and the milk, and that really appeals to me. Pardon my stuffy voice. I'm dealing with allergies like crazy. So this is what we're working on. It is an MDF panel, about 8 by 10, which works for me. I love these panels. The background that I chose is country red. It's my go-to red for a lot of this stuff. I really like this color a lot. Now I gotta find my check stencil. Honestly, some days I couldn't find my butt with both hands. I had a check stencil sitting here, and I don't know where it went. I was ready for today. Oh, good Lord. Here we are. So the stencil I'm using is a 1/2-inch check. It seems to be my go-to for a lot of these country style pieces, these Farm Fresh pieces. I really like the 1/2-inch check. If you have a preference, if you prefer something a little bigger, there's absolutely no harm in using a 1-inch or even a 3/4. Any one of those will work just fine. I do find, however, that the smaller, going to a 1/4 inch, is a little busy. I find it a little busy. Larger is fine, but smaller I find is just a little bit too busy for this surface. Kathy, no, I put things in safe places all the time, and then I spend the rest of my week trying to figure out where I put them. Goodness gracious. Chat is busy today. You guys are awesome. Thank you again for your help with the puppy fund. We are just so thrilled. So there we go. I'm going to tape this in place. I prefer to secure the stencil, that way it doesn't shift. I don't like it when things shift. Now the color that I'm using for this background is cobblestone. I love this color, cobblestone. It's a nice warm neutral gray. It is just perfect for this. I find that using a warm white on this is a little too harsh a contrast, a little too bright, and I like to be able to subdue it a little bit. So by doing that, I use this cobblestone. It takes a little less work. It's a great color for this. What other color would look great other than red? You could use a dark blue. I've used dark blues in the background. Black works fine too. There's so many different colors you could use for the back. I chose a red because I'm quite fond of red for fall. However, you could actually go to a raw sienna or a burnt orange or even a sphaltum and then use the stencil over top of it. Any one of those deeper tones would work great. A deep dark orange, any one of those tones. It doesn't have to be a bright red. In this case, I'm using red, but you could absolutely use an orange or a black. Black would be awesome. Black would have that nice pop, you know? I like the contrast. Donna Shepherd and Deborah Graydon, hello. Darlene Greenwood, hello. And Patrick. So I'm going to stencil this background. And neatness doesn't count. Perfection is to be avoided at all costs. We are not looking for fully opaque or perfect. They do not have to be complete. I really like seeing a more irregular look to this background. It just gives it more of that distressed farmhouse look when they're not perfect. So I really don't worry about getting them absolutely perfect. We're going to distress this anyway. We're going to wear these out. So having them absolutely perfect just makes the work a little bit harder in the end. Let's see. Oh. So there we go. No. We haven't figured out yet what we're going to get Renee to do for our puppy challenge this year. I was tempted to ask him, to shave off his beard, but he just trimmed it the other day and he looks so handsome. He doesn't look like a member of ZZ Top, thankfully. He keeps his beard nicely trimmed, so I won't ask him to shave it, but we'll think of something. Good morning, Phyllis. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that, Kathy. Kathy's been living sort of under the threat of having to evacuate due to wildfire, so good to know that that's not looking like it'll come to fruition. That's good to hear. You think he should dress like an elf? I would love that. I would love that. I would pay money to see that. See him in tights and curly-toed shoes. That would be hilarious. Then again, he'd probably thrive on it, knowing my son. So we're just going to quickly finish this up. Oh, dress him up as Bob. Light up his beard. We did that last year. How about if Renee shows us some of his training with Mace? That's a great idea. I'm always so impressed. I mean, he works with her in the yard, and I know what Mace is like in the house, but yet when he takes her out and he's training her, she's so focused. And it's incredible to watch the difference in her when she's training as opposed to when she's, in pet mode. When she's in pet mode, she's just a lunatic. But when she's in training mode, it's like she suddenly becomes extremely focused. It's so strange. But he's so good with her. Gail, no, we hardly have any smoke at all where we are. Our biggest problem here has just been heat and humidity. And although we have a no burn here, nobody's allowed to, you're not even allowed to have one of those little tabletop fireplaces going or like an exterior fireplace, any of that, even the gas powered ones, they don't want you to use them at all. Mainly because it's been so hot, but we've really been very dry. We've had a lot of rain, but it doesn't come consistently. But when we get it, we really get it. Yeah, Renee does post videos and pictures in his Instagram. Yeah, Dot the Canine. It's fascinating to watch him train her. She's just amazing. And she's a bit of a character. And she's far too smart for her own good. She has figured out that if she signals to my husband that she needs to go outside, he has to go by the freezer. And then she will stop and sit in front of the freezer and then point with her nose at the freezer. And then refuse to go outside until he opens the freezer. Because she knows that that's where I keep the peppers. She's obsessed with peppers. So she loves a frozen pepper. I buy peppers when they're super fresh and on sale, and then I cut them into strips and I put them in the freezer, and she loves them. There we go. Almost done with this. Yeah, but Renee is an amazing puppy dad. Sweetheart. Deb Bloomfield, he only has red hair on his face. He has no hair on the rest of his head. He's just got a shaved head. He has taken after his mother. Took forever for my hair to go completely gray. Oh my gosh, Maze will do handsprings for peppers. She just loves peppers. She also likes frozen shrimp. She's a big fan of anything frozen. When she was wee little and she was teething, we used to give her an ice cube. And she would chew on the ice cube, chase the ice cube. It was a great toy. She batted around the house. Now, every time you open the freezer, she wants an ice cube. If you open the small fridge freezer, because that's where we put the ice, so. Yep, then she wants an ice cube, so she'll have an ice cube, but it's a bit different than having a 10-pound puppy chase an ice cube around the house than it is a 70-pound puppy chasing an ice cube around the house. But yes, it's no less entertaining. And there we go. So I've got checkerboard over my whole surface. And as I said, you don't need to make them perfect. None of these are perfect. Some are really faint. Others are none of them are fully opaque. But that's what we've got. So once you have this, you're going to dry this really well. Because you don't want to smear any little wet spots. There we are. Oh, Karen, it is so funny to watch her because she'll dive for it and then try to catch it. It just sails across the wood floors. She's priceless to watch. So we're going to distress this a little bit. We're going to distress in one direction and one direction only. I prefer that if my image is going to be in a landscape format, then I'm going to sand from left to right. Yes, Patrick, thank you, dear. I got a notification from Canada Post that it's on its way. Thank you. You didn't have to do that. So anything, if it's going to be seated landscape, then I'm going to sand it in a landscape fashion. If it's going to be positioned vertically, then I sand it vertically. It's just the way I do things. There's no real rhyme or reason for it. The only thing that I will say is regardless of which direction you choose, do it all in that direction. Don't, none of this stuff going in multiple directions. Choose one and stick with it. You're not obligated to do it one horizontally or vertically, but just choose one and stick with it. So I'm going to sand this horizontally. And I'm going to wear through some of those checks. I want to expose that red paint underneath. And I want to see some little scratches and little gouges in the paint. I want to see the paint worn. This just helps give you that really rustic country look. So I'm going to wipe off the dust, like so. And then I'm going to take my piece of shop towel and a little bit of water. And I go over it with water for a reason. It gives me a clear idea of what it'll look like with a coat of varnish on it. And then I can decide, is it distressed enough? Is it worn enough? And I think I'm happy with that. I've got nice pattern. Some of the checks are really worn quite thin. Others a little less so, which is fine. So I really like that sort of randomly worn appearance. So we're going to dry that. And then we're going to age this a little bit. There we are. Make sure that's good and dry. Now, I'm going to make a high-tech applicator out of 2 small pieces of shop towel. And I'm going to make a little pillow out of one and tuck it inside the other so that I have a little high-tech applicator. Now, you can use a little bit of water for this, or you can use a little bit of glaze. And the color I'm going to use is this one. This is soft black. We're going to give this a nice heavily aged look at the edges. And this is going to set the tone, so to speak. So your applicator should be wet, but not drippy. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of glaze. So you should be able to shake that without putting any moisture anywhere, but you need it to be wet. And then you're going to pick up a little bit of soft black. Now, this is going to scare the pants off a few of you, so just trust me. We're going to put some of that soft black at the outside edges, and this is where that glaze helps you. See? I'm going all the way around the outside edge with this soft black. Circular fashion, and I change directions. So it's going to look like a dog's breakfast for a little bit, but don't panic. Gonna come around. Now I like my corners to be a little darker than everything else. So I pay a little more attention to the corners and I blend out that edge. You know, what looks like that dark, uncontrolled edge, I blend it out. And then I put a little more dark in the corners. Just like that. Now, at this point, it's all going to look a little messy. That's okay. Because it will I promise you, soften up as we work. Now, I got very heavy-handed with the color, but if you're not comfortable pounding on color that way, then do it in little increments. Do it in, smaller amounts of color in controlled fashion. I've been doing this for years, so I'm okay with it. So, then the only thing you have to do, you're going to take that high-tech applicator, and you're going to turn it inside out. And take that outside, tuck it on the inside, and now we have a second high-tech applicator. Now I'm going to use that clean spot to blend the edges a little bit. Doesn't need to be much. Just like that. Just so that you don't get this hard edged line all the way around. So I'm going to dry that. And this is just our first one. We're going to do it again. Just not right now. So I'm going to show you something really nice. So we now have darkened corners, dark up here. This is going to be the bottom. We want this lighter area in here so that that little spot in behind our motif is going to be a little bit lighter. It pulls the eye towards all of that. So what we are going to do is tone all of this. And we're going to do that with a little bit of asphaltum, my favorite color. Oh, Kathy, you're talking about sanding film. It's the type of sand, it is a sandpaper per se, but it's usually on a latex background. And it's primarily used for a French finish or a French polish. But it's an ultra fine sandpaper. I mean, you can get it. It is a little pricey, but you usually only find it in stores that sell finishing materials. So I'm going to take a little bit of thinned asphaltum, heavily thinned, and I'm going to brush a coat over top of everything. Again, following, remember I went from left to right when I sanded. I'm going to put this on the same way so that I'm always following that same direction. So if you have scratches in your finish, gouges where the sandpaper perhaps cut right through the paint, then it becomes part of the finish. Is if you try to work against that, that's when things start to really stand out. This way you can hide a few little flaws or things that you don't care for. So I've got a thin layer of heavily thinned asphaltum over top of everything. So I'm going to dry this. Now, you're very welcome, Kathy. I'm glad I could help. I'm going to dry this, and then you are ready to trace and transfer your pattern on. Now, this one is done in stages, and the first thing we're going to do is our lettering. And I love doing it this way because I find it gives you the ability to really age the lettering a lot without adversely affecting the design element. Because I really want the design element to stand out, and I wanted it to have a little bit of depth. So, from here, you would use your white graphite to transfer your line drawing on. And look at that. I have my line drawing on already. Didn't think you want to sit there and watch me do that for a while. So the first thing we're going to tackle is all of this lettering. And I love doing my shading of the lettering first because it helps establish the lettering. It also gives it lots of lift. It makes the lettering look like it's elevated a little. And the shading color for this one is soft black, but if you want it a little bit darker, like I do, I'm going to use a little bit of lamp black. I'm going to use a 3/8 angled shader for this. The smaller angled shader. If you're more comfortable with a 1/4 inch, it's fine. Hi, Janet. If you're more comfortable with a 1/4 inch, it's fine, but remember to use the whole chisel edge of the brush. Most important. Now, I'm going to pick up a little bit of lamp black, and we're going to blend that out a little bit. I don't want to have a solid black float in there. And we're going to come underneath the lettering on the right side, like so. Nice little float. And remember what I said about having the whole chisel edge of the brush on the surface? Very important. It makes sure that those floats have that gradient that you need. Now I'm going to grab my mop brush. I want to make sure that these are softer. There we go. I also want to make sure I've got lots of liquid in my brush. Nice little float inside. So on the background, each letter, like so. Soften them a little bit. All this is going to do is give those that lettering a little bit of height, a little bit of dimension. And it's important, otherwise the lettering just looks a little flat. And we don't want flat lettering. Now, I haven't done anything spectacular with this lettering either. One of the things that I really love about this type, doing this type of rustic and heavily distressed stuff, is you get away with a few things. And sometimes those little flaws or things that we perceive as flaws actually work in your favor. Now, of course, Murphy's Law being what it is, this would be about the time that your floats would be absolutely perfect, that your lettering would be absolutely perfect. No matter how hard you try, you couldn't get it wrong if you wanted to, because that's how Murphy's Law works. So I try intentionally to let the lettering be a little imperfect. I don't worry about whether or not they're absolutely perfectly base coated. I don't worry about whether or not there's brush marks. I don't worry about those things. I'm more worried about whether or not the edges are clean. What happens inside the letter, I'm not worried about. Straight, level, clean edges, everything else doesn't matter. It's so frustrating when you've worked so hard on a piece, especially one that has lettering, and then when you're done with it and you varnish it and you stand back and you look at it and you realize that your lettering is going uphill slightly, or the letter that you started out at the beginning is bigger than the one at the very end, or something is just out of whack. Those are the more important elements, because those we are taught from a very young age to read top to bottom, left to right. And so it's ingrained in us to see things that are not level, and not straight. So we see those things and they stand out like a sore thumb. So whenever I'm doing lettering, the straight, the level, that is the most important thing. I don't worry about whether or not the lettering inside is fully opaque or whether it's absolutely perfect, no brush marks. Don't worry about that stuff. Straight and level is the most important thing. Everything else will come with time and practice. Let's see. Whew. Having a moment here. So I'm gonna bring this up so you can see. That gives that lettering a little bit of elevation. Whew, good heavens. And that, remember I always talking about keep making sure that the whole chisel edge of your brush is on the surface. This is why it's important. If you're using, you worked so hard to get a nice gradient of color in your brush, and then you're only using, the first quarter of it, you're in trouble. What's for dinner tonight? Debbie Buckman Easton asks. We are having prime rib burgers on the grill with all the trimmings. That's what we're having tonight. So, I'm going to dry this real quick. We got nice shadows in. I'm happy with those. This part always scares people. So I'm going to be using a little bit of warm white, and I'm going to use a little bit of Jo Sonja's Fast Dry Glaze. And I'm thinking it's going to be a number 2 rigger. There we go. I've got a 0 and a number 2. My number 2 has seen better days, but I love it. As soon as it gets wet, a little bit of Fast Dry Glaze. We're going to thin this paint out so that it's a little thicker than milk, just a little. I love doing lettering. You guys know that. It's one of my favorite things. I was working on a new piece yesterday. Finished the line drawings this morning. It has very little lettering in it, which is unusual for me. So we're going to start with the Farm Fresh. And I'm going to press my brush into place. Here we are. Now the nice thing about working with that rigger is that it has a nice chisel edge. So we can get those nice straight lines across the bottom. There we are. Now, the nice thing about doing that shading first is that if the shading goes over onto the letter a little bit, you have the ability to clean it up very easily. There we go. There we are. Vinegar gummies. You're talking about those cider vinegar gummies? I had those recommended to me a couple of years ago, mainly to help with digestive issues. It actually created more for me. It's too high acid for me. It just does a number on my stomach. So Your antihistamine is kicking in. I think one of the most relaxing people to listen to was Bob Ross. He just, you know, there was something about the sound of his voice while he was painting that just, it was so mellow. And I'm not sure that people watched for the painting. I think they watched because he made it look effortless. And that voice, his voice was just so calming. Hi, Sharon. So, I'm only putting one coat of warm white on this lettering for a reason. Same reason I did the distress thing with the checkerboard. I want to be able to distress it. And there's no point in putting, 3 layers of paint on if I'm going to sand off 2 of them anyway. So I want to be able to wear through the paint in a few places. And so I'm going to only use one coat of warm white. And I'm a little obsessed with this whole farmhouse thing. Don't mind telling you, I have way too much fun with it. It's fun to paint. And it's not difficult to paint. It's a process. It's getting through, doing all of the steps. That's all it is. But it isn't difficult to paint. And it's a simplified font. It's nothing. It's just a block font. This one is called Country Farmhouse, believe it or not. It's an elegant looking font, but simple. And I like simple. Simple works for me. And especially when you're doing something like this. I'm a huge fan. Now, I got a funny feeling we're going to run a little long today because there's actually a lot to this piece, but I'm okay with that if you are. I have taken to framing a lot of these because they're just on a simple 8x10 panel. Framing them is actually pretty simple. So I picked up some inexpensive frames from Michael's. They had a buy one get one deal. I really like they have a simple white mat, which works fine for me, and not a heavy over the top frame. Very simplistic. I like the black frame myself. And all of my farmhouse pieces I have framed, and I have them hung in various places around my house because I like that look. They appeal to me. So they're farm fresh. I think the trick to painting lettering, I think, quite honestly, is not thinking of it as lettering, but thinking of it as another space to paint. I think there's something intimidating about lettering for some people because we all think we have horrible handwriting. But honestly, if you think of it as just another space to paint, it loses some of that intimidation, I think. That and having the right brush to paint them with makes a world of difference. And there are some basic rules when you're painting lettering. And I mean, I reiterate them every time, so. Hi, Sharon. And again, I am not worried about whether or not there are brush marks in this lettering. Doesn't matter at this point. We're going to distress it anyway. Hi, Linda. So nice to see everybody popping in. Oh, I love farm country. Although we live in the village, there's actually a farm not far from here. A big one. And it's inside the village limits. And it backs onto the forests. So it's a beautiful spot. I tell people I live out in the country. I do live in the country. I live in a little village out in the country. And I love it out here. I like that we don't have any of the noise from the city. We don't have the noise from the traffic. Get the occasional plane going overhead because the airport is not far from here. But in general, it is a very quiet place to live. And I love it. This is a very forgiving font. You get the right brush. This type of thing is very easy to paint. Hi, Sandy. Hello from Massachusetts. Is it as warm in Massachusetts as it is here? Yeah, I like the peaceful. The only time that we have any significant amount of traffic in our neck of the woods or in our part of the village is when there's a soccer tournament because the soccer pitch is just down the street from us. It's literally at the end of the laneway, called Shaw Park. There is a soccer pitch, not the soccer pitch, but a soccer pitch. And even then, it's pretty quiet. Very warm and humid here. Yep. It's so hot. I don't like heat. I don't do heat. Okay, almost finished with this. You guys get tired of watching me paint lettering. What's going on in Winnipeg that makes it so noisy? And I think that depends on what part of the city you're in. Hopefully, I don't know. I used to live in Westwood, in Winnipeg. And it always depended on what was going on in the city, you know. And it's summer, so the thing about Winnipeg in the summertime is that there's car shows, there's so much going on, and then the what do you call that? The expo, or the X. There's always so much going on in Winnipeg in the summertime. It's a little quieter in the winter. Too flippin' cold to go anywhere. I loved Winnipeg. It was a great city. So one more letter and we will be on to the next phase of this. Let's see. Oh, the chat stalled. So if you have a question and I haven't answered it, it's because the chat has sort of stopped. So hopefully Renee, if he's following, will be able to come and check it out for us. There we go. Okay, so we have lettering. We're going to fix something here. This doesn't look very good. There we are. All right, Farm Fresh pumpkins. I'm going to rinse out this brush. I miss you, sweetie. My girl Linda Giesbrecht. Here we are. I seem to have lost the chat. Elizabeth Bradburn. It was on a carton. Yes. Yep. Are they specific to lettering? No, they're not. Riggers can be used for a wide variety of things. It's just a really great brush for lettering. So Renee's going to fix the chat, I think, because I keep losing the chat. Whew. Hello. Holy hockey pucks. I don't have the YouTube chat. Oh, there it is. It does have a nice K, doesn't it? I like it. So, lettering is nice and dry. And now I'm going to scare you. I'm going to let that cool for a second. What's new in the zoo? None.
Yeah, I'm looking at fixing the smoker.
Ah.
You got YouTube now?
Yep. There it goes. So, remember the sanding sponge? Now, I sanded the original surface one direction, and when I distressed the background, sanded that same direction. We're going to do the same thing with Farm Fresh. We're just not going to be as quite aggressive with it. Now, this is where that one coat of white comes in handy because we can wear through it without destroying our lettering. So I'm just going to very gently, one direction, distress my lettering. Don't worry about everything else back there. So the idea being, I just want to wear through the lettering a little bit. And I'm focusing just on the letters. So I'm going to wear through my letters in a few places. So some of the lettering is going to be just perfect, others not so much, but I really love wearing through it. There we go. And then I'm going to take a clean shop towel and I'm going to wipe this down. Now I'm going to bring this up so you can see how it's worn through and it softened the letters. It's also, any little flaws that were in those letters, they're now gone. We've worn them out. So now comes the scary part. We're going to take that high-tech applicator and we're going to take a little of that soft black and we're going to start in those corners and come down. And yes, it's going to go right over top of that lettering. Don't panic. It's scary, but it's fine. Don't worry. And you're going to bring a little of that soft black down onto that lettering. Not a ton, we just want to subdue it a little bit. There we go, look at that. So, I've deepened my corners, I subdued my lettering, but I haven't buried everything. So I'm going to bring a little more soft black down into these corners, across the bottom. Just like that. And I'm going to dry this, and then we're going to put a wash of asphaltum over top of this as well. Now, at any point, if you want to deepen this or add more, you absolutely can. You are not obligated to just leave it as is. Now, the asphaltum is going to change everything quite a bit. So, make sure this is good and dry. And I'm going to grab my fugly brush and some asphaltum. And we're going to put a wash of asphaltum over top of everything. So when it comes to this kind of thing, it's layers, layers, layers. Not looking at getting everything perfect and the end result right at the beginning. It doesn't work that way. So that little bit of asphaltum over top. Again, you can be as aggressive with it as you like. I'm a fan. I like lots. I like that sort of grungy, it has been laying around in the barn for years look. That appeals to me. So I'm just putting a wash of that over everything. Yes, you can leave the brush marks in. All of those little grungy bits look great. You're afraid you might get too, then use small amounts and layers. If you're afraid that you're going to put too much on in one shot, do it in small amounts at a time and just build up. Hi, Charmaine. Aw, what a nice thing to say. Thank you. I'm a fun teacher. I'm glad you think I'm fun. Somebody should think I'm fun. But I like this heavily distressed, this very aged appearance. This appeals to me in a lot of ways. So our next step is to start building up our design element in the middle. And I like to start with the things that are furthest away, which means the leaves and the sunflower are going to be the pieces that are farthest from us. So we're going to start with those. Hi, Tayel. Oh, goodness, Dorothy. Hope you stay safe. Dorothy's got a storm in her area. So I'm going to grab a nice round brush. I'm going to be working with a number 5. And I'm going to take a little bit of warm white. And I'm going to put a coat of warm white on these leaves. And I'm leaving a little space for the petals of that sunflower. So I'm going to start with these leaves. Like so. Now, it is not an absolutely perfect base coat. Doesn't have to be. We're just putting a little bit of warm white on these leaves. And there is a method to my madness. This little bit of white is going to, because we're working on a darker background, this little bit of warm white is going to allow the brighter colors that we're using to stand out and stand up. So I'm going to base coat all of the petals of the sunflower. And notice the way I'm base coating. I'm starting at the point and pulling back. So that it's a simple, any brush marks and whatnot are just going to fall into the finish of this petal. So there we go. Look at that. Now, for all those little tight areas, those little small areas and those background petals, I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. So I'm going to grab a rigger, and again with the thinned warmed white, and I'm going to leave that little space between each of those segments. And I always pull the stroke back towards the center of the flower. Just like that. So, we have a sunflower. And I forgot to mention the giveaways that we have for today. Here's some nice stuff from Tombow. We got a nice little goodie bag for you from Tombow. It's got some professional drawing pencils in it. One of my favorite erasers, my black soft. I think a lot of it, Linda Gaddy, is just, it looks easy because I've done it for so many years. And it's brush control. That's the big thing. It's just brush control. Learning how to get the brush to do what you want it to do, making sure that you've got the right amount of paint in the brush. And that comes with practice. That doesn't happen overnight. It does come with practice. But there are lots of tricks to make it a little easier. So we have a center to our sunflower. And I'm going to go in with some asphaltum. And I'm just going to pity pat that in. I don't worry about too much. It's just paint. If it needs another coat, it needs another coat. Not a big deal. So I just pity pat that in. Doesn't have to be perfect. If it has a little bit of texture and there's, brush marks and whatnot, that's okay too. It's just the center of a sunflower. We don't need to have it absolutely meticulous. So, there we go. We've got a center to our sunflower. Easy peasy. The next thing we're going to do is this little pumpkin over here. We have a white pumpkin on this side. So there we are. Now each segment of this pumpkin, I try to leave a little space. I absolutely detest having to retrace anything onto my surface. It never goes on the way you want it to, ever. So I prefer to not do it at all. And so I always leave just a sliver of a space between them, between each of those segments. It just makes your life a little bit easier. And the same applies even on these areas here that are tucked underneath. Try to leave a little space. If it's going to be the same color, leave that space. So there we are. It does not have to be fully opaque. We just need a little base to interrupt the color. That's all. So there we are. Look at that. So, white pumpkin. Our next one is that big blue one in the background. Now, having said that, you don't have to paint this the way I've painted it. If you would prefer to have the little pumpkin blue, paint the little pumpkin blue. Switch them around, move them around. The color is going to work regardless of where you place them. I put the color palette together with that in mind, that you could put it any which way you wanted to. You are not obligated to put it in the order that I used. That would be boring. and wouldn't leave a whole lot of room for individuality or creativity. So if you would prefer to have your blue pumpkin be smaller, then by all means, paint the blue pumpkin smaller. Make the blue pumpkin an orange pumpkin if you want to. Entirely up to you. Like I said, it's paint. Can do whatever works for you. So, I'm just kind of partial to blue pumpkins. Never seen one in my entire life, but I really like the idea of a blue pumpkin. Especially a Bahama blue pumpkin. That works. So I'm just getting that white in there because this is just going to be our base. So that all of our colors, all of the colors that we are going to put on here are really going to pop. We want them to pop. Oh, yeah. Let's see. Jody Schmidt, hello. And Denise Chavez. Your brush usually controls you. The round brush that I'm using is a Dynasty Black Gold number 5. I just like that they have nice snap to them. They come back to a nice point. They're just an easy brush to work with. So I've got a little leaf here. So this actually is going to look a little sketchy for a bit. So now we're going to start painting in that oak leaf that's back here. This is perhaps the most boring part of this piece, is doing this white bit. Getting this in simply because it's a little bit tedious. It's like base coating. Doing base coating is always tedious, but it's necessary. And anything that you base coat, I follow this rule of thumb. The best finish you're going to get is the one you're painting over. That's the best advice I can ever give when it comes to painting anything. It doesn't matter what it is. The best result you're going to get is the one you're painting over. So if you're painting a piece of furniture and it's got blistered, cracked, an imperfect finish underneath it, painting over it isn't going to change that. It's going to be an blistered, imperfect surface with a coat of paint on it. That's what you're going to get. So the same is true for base coating. It's the same is true for anything that you're painting as far as decorative painting goes. It is always that. The best result you're going to get is the one you're painting over. So, which means that you have to start out with a good finish. Lucy, this is like gessoing. I am fast because I paint a certain way. So that attitude, the best finish that I'm going to get is the one I'm painting over, is why I put down a coat of white. I want nice bright colors. I want to have to put on as few coats as possible because I absolutely hate going over things 5 and 6 times. Most of the time when I'm painting, most of the stuff that I paint, I very rarely have more than one coat of any color. But I will almost always have a coat of white or a coat of gesso underneath it. Almost always. There's very few exceptions. And my reasoning is this. If I have a dark color, in this case red, and I'm going to put some nice bright vibrant colors over top of it, they're going to be affected by whatever is underneath it. Like this red. And I don't want them to be adversely affected by it. So I'm going to neutralize that issue as much as possible. And I do that by putting down a coat of warm white, coat of gesso, just something to interfere with the color. You could use gray if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter what it is. Just in this case, the colors are going to be nice and bright, so the white is going to help me achieve that. So, but a coat of something. And I try to follow the shape of whatever I'm painting. So in this case, it's pumpkin, so I'm going to follow the shape of the pumpkin. And again, each of those segments get painted individually. There are certain colors that just don't do well when you put them over top of another color, especially a dark one. Putting a green over top of a red, green neutralizes red. So if you don't have a little bit of something under it to bury some of that red, the green is adversely affected and takes on a more of a neutral tone. If you want to maintain those nice bright earthy colors, then get a little white under it. Or a little gesso. Just something to change up how that color is affected by the one underneath it. And in this particular case, I like a little bit of white. Now, something I do want to cover today, but when we get a chance, somebody had asked me last week about cleaning a stencil, so and I didn't remember to do that at the end of the day. So I would like to cover that today, if you guys don't mind. So, et voila. We have stems in here on our pumpkins. I'm just going to quickly fill those in with a little bit of white. So essentially, I've just painted the whole painting with one color. Ta-da! So we have sunflowers, we have pumpkins, we have leaves. Everything has got a coat, albeit a thin coat, of warm white. And you will see the difference when we start putting this color on. And we're going to start with all of those leaves in our background. Okay. I'm going to make sure that this is dry, so I don't, because it's me, I will smear it. I'm just looking to see if I missed a question or not. There we go. So my base color for the leaves is antique green. You can use lush green if you have it. I like lush green. It's a little bit more opaque than antique green, so it covers a little bit better. I'm going to use my number 2 rigger. And we're going to grab a little bit of that antique green. And this is why I like that little bit of white underneath. Look at how bright that antique green comes up over top of that white. So we get a nice bright tone. If I put this right over top of the red, it loses a lot. It doesn't retain that brightness. And it's heavily influenced by that red underneath. Whereas if I use a little bit of white, look at how it pops. Love it. I love antique green. It's, I think, perhaps my favorite green. I use it quite a bit. And this is also where you can get a little closer to the edges of things. You know, those little spaces that you left, this is where you can start to close some of those up. There's a nice little leaf. And we've got two larger leaves over here. And as I said, this is where you can start cleaning things up a little, come right to the edges. And again, base coat following the shape of the leaf or the petal or whatever the shape is. If you follow the shape of it, all of the brush marks come back to one specific point. It just gives you a cleaner look in the end. See what I said? What did I say? I said, sure in heck, I'm going to put my fingers in it because, you know, it's me. I have the gift for sticking my fingers in wet paint. So there we are. Easy peasy. Now, I very rarely use more than one coat. Very rare. Primarily because I put layer upon layer upon layer of things on top of. So, traditionally in decorative painting, we would put multiple coats so that we had a nice uniform color. I come from more fine art, oil painting, a lot of glazing, a lot of those things. So I very rarely put down a fully opaque base coat. Chili or soup? I'm going to have to make some star soup this afternoon, I think. Oh, by the way, I put up a new recipe on my recipe page on my website, if you're looking for it. I did a bunch of new recipes this week. Well, not new recipes to me, but they'll be new to you. I love putting recipes up. Now I can't remember which one it was. Oh, the Nana's grand soft molasses cookies. My grandmother's molasses cookies are up there. And I put up my garlic dressing recipe as well. That went up earlier. That one you'll find in the savories. It's called creamy roasted garlic dressing. So if you're looking for that. So that's dry. I love this color. This is Baby Duck. This is that new yellow from Decor. Oh, Gail, I'm glad you like the recipes. Veggie marinara. Yummy. Star soup. Okay. Betty, there's a tiny little pasta noodle called star noodles, I guess we'd call them here. But when the kids were little, we were living in Europe, and they were referred to as Sternchen. Stern is star. Little stars are called Sternchen, little tiny, and I mean they are tiny. And whenever the kids were sick, or they were just, having a bad day or whatever, I would make a pasta soup for them with a chicken stock and a little celery and a little carrot and a little bit of chicken, and then I would cook it with this star pasta. Um, it's not that hard to find, actually. I get them at our local bulk food store, and it's a really they're so cute, but little tiny stars. But I mean, here he is. He's like 38 years old. Yeah, he still loves star soup. So that's always been the little. I cook vegetables, make a good stock, cook him some carrots and whatnot, and would have these little stars. So Stenciling soup, little star soup was the kids was their favorite when they were little. So that's what he was talking about earlier when he wasn't feeling good. He said he wanted some Jewish penicillin and it's star soup. Pastina, yes, Cheryl, that's exactly what it is. Pastina. Yep. And most bulk food stores carry it. So the sunflower petals are just going to be a single coat of baby duck. And I pull the stroke from the point back towards the center. Just like that. So that all of the brush marks always lead back towards the center. It just works. Et voila. So I had a busy week in the kitchen. I processed a lot of vegetables and started harvesting some rosemary this week. Oh, for pity's sake. I managed to put my fingers in it. I started harvesting rosemary this week. I'm a little obsessed because I love rosemary. It's one of my favorite herbs, and my rosemary's done very well this year. I wish I could say the same about my basil, but although it's still doing well, it's not as robust as it usually is. And I'm not sure why, but it's just not doing as well as it usually does. I had to replace my lavender this year. They, for whatever reason, died off through the winter. And so I was a little upset by that because I love my lavender. So I'm not harvesting this year. I'll harvest next year. But my two types of basil, neither of them did very well. They did okay, but not. The last couple of years I've had oodles of basil, and this year not so much. But my oregano has lost its flippin' mind, and so has the thyme. So I'm going to have lots of both of those for the dehydrators this year. But Renes this spring got me a new smoker. So now I have two, and I put on 15 pounds of bacon this week. So it's been vacuum packed with seasonings and maple syrup and all that good stuff. I did that earlier in the week so that Sunday it can go in the smoker. It'll come out of the packing tomorrow morning, and once it's out of the packing, it'll go back into the refrigerator out of the packaging so that it can dry a little bit on the outside, forms like a skin on the outside, and then I can pop it into the smoker. So I did about 25 pounds last year in two separate batches because the smoker won't take more than 15 at a time. I didn't have beetles this year. It just didn't seem to oomph. I didn't have beetles. I have had no problem with insects at all this year. See, Deb knows what I'm talking about. Stenciling. Yeah. Opal basil, it's purple and recedes like crazy. Wow, I don't have that. I have Mediterranean basil and I have sweet basil. those two those two seem to do best here. Some certain ones don't do well here at all. I did have some red basil. I think that might be the one you're talking about. At least that's what I know it as, is red basil. But it just doesn't seem to take here at all. I do, however, Jessica, you just reminded me, my beans took off like insane this week. So I may have to harvest some of those too. So I'm going to dry this. So there is a method to my madness when I'm base coating. I like to work from the back and move forward. So our little white pumpkin over here, I love sweet basil. Thai basil doesn't do all that well for me here. But sweet basil does, and so does Mediterranean basil. Mediterranean basil has a little tiny leaf, almost heart-shaped. It gets very, very dense, very, very bushy. Has the most extraordinary aroma. It's beautiful, and the flavor is incredible. The only difference is it likes really hot, dry weather, and it has these tiny little leaves, little heart-shaped leaves, nice dark leaves, and they're so good. And it dries really nicely. It's very nice. So we have this little pumpkin down here. Now I used almondine to base coat this, but if you don't have almondine, you can use oyster beige. That color will work out just fine. And typical of anything that I paint, it seems to take forever to get through the base coating, but then it doesn't take very long to paint everything else. So I'm going to use a little bit of almondine, a color I really like. Almondine is a really nice, I don't want to say tan. It's not really a tan. It's a very light beige. And a very nice, it's a really nice tone. And again, I am painting in the shape, following the shape of the pumpkin. So if it's got a curve, I follow that curve. Keeps your brush marks moving. 51 pints of beans. Oh my Lord. I don't think that my little garden patch is going to produce that much. But it is going to produce more than enough for this family. I love beans. I love green beans. Renee gave me a canner for Christmas, so I'm looking forward to using that. Using it more. I did 8 quarts of tomato soup a couple of weeks ago, and plan on doing more. My tomato plants have lost their flippin' minds. Because we've had so much heat and then so much rain, all of my tomato plants bolted. So I have these monstrously tall tomato plants, and they're just starting to produce a lot of fruit. But it's when they bolt, they spend all of their time producing leaves and stem and no fruit. So it's catching up. We're catching up. We are catching up. And my cucumbers, I have always had a hard time getting cucumbers to grow here, and I don't know why, but this year it's looking like I might actually have a pretty decent harvest of those. And I've got zucchini for the first time. People around me are, have so much zucchini, they don't know what to do with it, and I can't get it to produce at all. So it's kind of weird, but it is what it is. So there we go. White pumpkin, almondine, 1 coat. Doesn't really take much. And then I'm going to grab that round brush, and we're going to go with the Bahama Blue because I love my Bahama Blue. I'm with you, Donna. I have 4 plants. I can't get them to do anything. I have beautiful plants, beautiful flowers, but I haven't got a single pepper. My beans have lost their minds. I have onions galore. I'm excited about that. Can't wait to start picking onions. I use a lot of green onion, so I decided to plant some this year and they actually did really well, so I'm happy. And my little herb garden is thriving, so I'm a happy camper. I have nothing to be unhappy about. There's some really great recipe for roasted red pepper soup, roasted tomato and red pepper soup on my website, and that's the one I canned. I had a whole flat of tomatoes I'd gotten from Costco. Beautiful flat of tomatoes. Got them home. The color was beautiful. Got them home, and they were actually quite soft. It was like they had. They were just a couple of days away from being too ripe. So instead of, tossing them or taking them back, I didn't see the point in taking them back. I just quartered them all and went and got some peppers out of my freezer because I always have lots of peppers. I went and got some peppers out of my freezer, threw in some garlic and some red onion. And popped it into the oven, drizzled with a little bit of olive oil, and roasted them for about 35 to 40 minutes. Not too hot. You don't want the oven too hot. It'll make things bitter. And then when I take it out, I let them cool a little bit and then dump it and all of the juice into a pot of about 1.5 liters of vegetable stock. You can use chicken stock if you prefer, but vegetable stock will work just fine, especially if you prefer if you're a vegetarian, it's just the better choice. And then you just put that on to simmer for a good 15 minutes or so. Nothing too heavy. You don't want to bring it to a boil. And then break out your little whiz gizmo. I have a hand blender. I call it my whiz gizmo. And then just whiz it in there until it's nice and smooth. If you prefer a vegetarian version, you can add a little bit of soy milk to it, or a little bit of almond milk is nice too. And if you are okay with using dairy, I usually throw in about 1/2 cup of heavy cream. Whiz it, add a little salt and pepper, and then I pour all of that into clean jars, sterilized jars, and then can it. And it's shelf stable for quite some time. And it's absolutely delicious. Don't leave your car unlocked at night. Your friends and family will fill it with summer squash. I wish. Oh, I have the opposite problem. I bought 6 small beefsteak tomato plants, very small, and put those out, and they bolted in there, but they've got to be at least 5 feet tall and loaded. They're falling over. They're so heavy at this point. Oh, Jessica, that tomato soup is to die for. It's so good. So, we're going to come down here. I'm using a little bit of red spice. I love this color. This is a deckwork color. It's a nice rustic. It's a reddish brown. Somebody compared it to burnt sienna, but I think it's better than a burnt sienna. It's a nicer tone. And so we're going to use that red spice, and this is our base color for this oak leaf. The only downside to this color is that it's very transparent, but it's going to work exceptionally well for what we're using it for. And I did find I needed to come back in and give this a second coat because the first one I put on was a little too thin, but that's okay. Such a rich, rich color. Very pretty. I love autumnal colors. All these fabulous rich oranges and rich reds and old greens. I call this an old green. They say an antique green. It has a very European feel to it for me. It reminds me greatly of living in Europe. But such a pretty color. So I'm smoking 15 pounds of bacon this weekend because I don't have anything else to do. The funny part is, Cindy, you talk about having a black thumb. When it comes to houseplants, the only thing I can grow with any success is mold. I don't do houseplants because it's just wrong. Nobody should, kill things the way I do. It's just, yeah, no. So I don't do houseplants, but outside, I'm not too bad. I can grow stuff outside. Don't ask me to grow anything or keep anything alive in the house. I mean, the cats, the dog, and the kids are lucky they made it. So, but when it comes to the outside, anything outside, I'm golden. So I'm going to find some raw sienna and some salted caramel. I'm in love with this color. You can tell this is my second bottle, and this one's almost empty. I have been going through this salted caramel like crazy. It's a great color. It's very pretty. Even by itself, it's very pretty. So I'm going to love this color, salted caramel. And it's a little more opaque than most of those new colors this year. This one covers a little bit better. But honestly, again, when it comes down to a lot of the stuff that I paint, I very rarely put more than one coat on. There are the occasion when I do it, but for the most part, one coat is ample, usually because I'm putting so many other colors over top.
How you doing?
Not too bad. How you doing?
Yeah.
Meh. You sick?
I'm sick.
He's sick.
You cleaned out the smoker though.
Oh, good. Ready to go.
For bacon.
Yep. 15 pounds of it.
15 pounds of bacon.
Yep. That'll make Dad happy. You know what? There's nothing. In the middle of the pandemic, I learned to make it. Made my first batch in my smoker, and it's amazing. Homemade bacon, it just does not get any better than that.
It's cheaper too.
And it's cheaper. Well, I got 15 pounds of bacon for $41. You can't quite beat that. I know, bacon prices are ridiculous. And there's less and less in every package. That's what drives me nuts. The price doesn't change, but the amount that you get does. Shrinkflation. That's what I call it. The price didn't go up, but the size of the package got smaller. So, paint the stems with our antique green. You watching the chat?
Yep. Just making sure it's working. Is the bacon recipe on the Traeger site?
No, it isn't, but I could put it up there if you're interested. It's a little time consuming, but it's worth it. And I have one for salmon too. Oh, is it on the Traeger site? No, it isn't. No, this is my own recipe. But I'm going to dry this. Now we only got one leaf and one pumpkin left to base coat. There's cold medication upstairs if you want one. Yeah. Cold Tylenol. Some in the corner cabinet in the bathroom. Doesn't do a thing for this. It's not an allergy thing, so. Where's my raw sienna? There it is. Raw sienna. So our little leaf over here is going to be base coated with raw sienna. One coat. Kathy, I'll warn you now, if you make your own bacon, you'll never go back to the other one. Or if you do, it'll be like, I bought a couple of packages of Costco's bacon, which is excellent. Yes, Linnell, we know you can grow just about anything. I saw that monster in your yard. That thing is gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. I don't do plants. I have my flower beds look great, and my garden looks great. Don't ask me to grow a house plant. I don't do house plants. My beautiful niece, Mylène, can grow anything. It's insane. Her house plants are insane. A couple of years ago, we did that. One of the French florals with the pink hibiscus. That was from my niece's. It was absolutely massive. Her hibiscus is just insanely gorgeous. I don't do houseplants. Herbs, no problem. Tomatoes, no problem. As long as I can put it outside, it's all good. Don't ask me to keep anything. Don't ask me to keep anything alive inside the house. Yep. I bring a plant home and my husband asks me, what I have against it. So the kids used to refer to houseplants as victims. I am not a houseplant person, and I don't do cactus. Rigger brushes are a little flat. They have a chisel edge like a flat brush. Wanda. So yeah, they're ideal for doing lettering because of that. It makes them ideal for doing a bunch of things, actually. Okay, so I am just about ready. Here's our pumpkin. I'm going to rinse this brush out a little bit. I need to do something here. A spot there that just wasn't very pretty. There we go. Okay. The nice thing about using warm white and then leaving that space is that you can thin out some warm white a little later on And you can apply another coat over top, following the shape of the pumpkin. Notice that that's what I'm doing by follow the shape of my pumpkin. So that when you put that little wash of warm white over it, it buries or reduces how sharp those lines are. Because we're going to put an orange on top of this. I'm using Canyon Orange for this one. You're very welcome, Wanda. I'm using Canyon Orange for this pumpkin. I wanted something a little more opaque, although I love this orange flame. It's got heat, it's got everything I want on it. For the base coat, I wanted something a little bit more opaque, so I'm using Canyon Orange. It's a very nice orange, and it's ideal for pumpkins. It's still an orange, so it's not a solid color, but it does give us all of that heat that I want. So, and you'll notice I'm following the shape of each of those segments. I want the brush marks, if there's any in it, I want them to follow the shape of that segment. There's a method to my madness. Same with each of those segments. So follow the shape of it. There we go. And it's one coat. Just one coat. And then we've got those little bits at the back of our pumpkin that those need to be filled. I'll just go in there with the rigger to fill them in. And all the fun stuff is done. No, actually it's not. Fun stuff's just about beginning. So, I've got a little bit of thinned almondine. See how we've got really dark, light lines there? I'm going to thin out a little almondine. And we're just going to put a wash of that color right over top of our pumpkin. All that does is subdue those lines a little bit. Makes them a little less noticeable, but you can still see them. But it makes them a little easier to paint. Now, when I hold this up, you can still see those lines. So it makes life a little bit simpler. So I'm using that number 5 round. I use that round a lot for base coating. It's a great brush for base coating. So I'm going to dry this, make sure everything is good and dry. And then we're going to start all the fun stuff. Now the rest of this actually goes very quickly. Oh, you love the paint. Isn't that a great app? It is just the best thing ever, keeping track of your paint. I love it. Not only can you keep track of your paint, but you can also put together your shopping list. Anytime that you need, if it's on your phone, and if you happen to be in Hobby Lobby or Michael's or whatever, you're looking for a certain color, it tells you, you know exactly what you need anytime. Okay. So now the fun stuff. So I'm going to start with our sunflower and our leaves back there. So I usually shade leaves either with plantation pine or black green. Either one will work just fine. My palette is an absolute travesty here. I'm going to give myself a clean palette. Okay, worst is over. All of that base coating is done. So the rest of it's going to come fairly quickly. going to grab some black green. Ow. So on our palette, we're going to need a little bit of black green. Or plantation pine. Either one of those will work just fine. We're going to need a little bit of orange flame. I love orange flame. You can use country red or red alert or any nice bright orange tone will work just fine. So we're going to start with all of the greenery on this, which means all of these green leaves back here and on these stems. So I'm using a little bit of plantation pine. A little too much moisture in my brush. Now, on the leaves, I always put my first shading at the base of the leaf where it joins the stem, and it's a U-shaped float. Just like that. And then shade the leaves. Again, a U-shaped float. This one is tucked in behind this oak leaf, so I need to put a little shadow in there. And it is also a U-shaped float. Underneath our sunflower, nice U-shaped float. And I like to bring that float on the chisel edge up the sides of the leaf a little bit. I don't do the center vein right away because if we do, we're going to mess with that first shadow that we just put in. So we want to let this first shadow dry before we start doing the center veins. So get in underneath that sunflower. And then our little same U-shaped float at the base of each of these leaves. So you get that nice dark float right at the bottom of the leaf where it joins the stem. Just like that. So this is what it should look like. It's not going to look real pretty just yet, but you can see where the placement is. So you need to dry those. And then we're going to put in our shading on that center vein. It would help if I had some liquid in the brush. There we go. Just bring that center vein out to the point. Just like that. Remember what I said about you having your whole chisel edge on the surface? Very important. That's what gives you that nice gradient, that nice transition from the darkest color out to the lightest, is having that whole chiseled edge on your surface. And then we've got this little leaf down here. Don't forget this one. Get that color in there. And we're going to start where the stem joins that leaf and come out to the point. And we'll dry that. Then we're going to shade those stems. Have a good day at work, Linnea. Palette paper. I use two different types. Haven't been able to get my favorite of late. I just got a package the other day, and I don't want to open it just yet till I use this one up. But I like using the Gray Matters or gray palette paper, and I use the 9x12. I just, as far as the size of it, I just prefer the 9 by 12. It functions better in my painting space. So we're going to put a shadow on the right side of each of those stems with a float of that plantation pine, black green, whichever dark green you chose to use. Dun, dun, dun. I'm a fan. I like the darker green. The darker the better. Just find it looks really nice. Now for highlighting those leaves, I always come back to my margarita. I'm a fan. I like my margarita. It's transparent enough that it gives us good coverage, opaque enough that it gives us a good highlight. So my highlight color of choice is a little bit of margarita. And yes, Charmaine, I do have bad floating days. And so I like to take that color down the center vein, and then I pull it across like this, and I'll do these little chippy bits at the edge of my leaf. It just helps give it a little bit of a serrated look to the leaf. Just like that. So essentially I pull the float and then I chisel a little bit and then leave a little space, little float, and then chisel, little float, and then chisel. So it gives the edge of your leaf a serrated look. Just like that. Especially on those bigger leaves, I like that look. So I'm going to go down the center vein, like that little chiseled bit. Don't forget to do it a little on the other leaf as well, on the other edge. I like that little chiseled bit because it just gives that leaf, you know, a little more texture instead of looking like a flat, shiny thing. I like that little chisel. And you can tap and pull a little more if you want to. If you want it to look really textured, you can tap and pull and add a little more texture to it. But look what it does for your leaves. Gives you a really pretty leaf. Now on these little short ones, these little tiny ones, I start my highlight where the shadow ended. So start out here, pull it up to the point, come up on the chisel edge, little highlight on the tip of each leaf. I like how that looks. And I kind of like the rustic look that this gives it. It's not that perfect, delicate, decorative painted. I kind of like the more rustic look that this achieves. And I like that. I like the imperfections. I think it just makes things a little more. So we have on the stems, use that same color. We'll put a highlight on our stem here. And it's a pretty straightforward one. I like to leave a little space. So they're not perfect. We're going to add some other details, so I'm not too worried about those. So I need to brighten this. Highlight a little. Not quite bright enough. There we go. Ooh, there it is. It wasn't quite bright enough. It needed a little something, something. There. So our sunflower. our sunflower. We're going to use a little bit of that orange flame. I love this orange. I like the heat that orange flame gives everything. We're going to put a little U-shaped float right at the base of the petal. And I'm leaving a little space from the edge in, just a little. So we're not going all the way to the edge of every petal. We're leaving a little space. So nice little U-shaped float right at the base of each petal, leaving that little space. There we go. And then we're going to dry that. I know, this looks like pretty mousy sunflower right at the moment. Linda Engstrom, which one? Am I ordering what from Amazon? I may have missed the lead into that. So that orange flame, now we're going to separate the petals. So you're going to float those little ones that are in between, and like this. So now you should be able to see that little space much clearer. Do you see that space on those petals? That's going to give that sort of a cupped look. Oh, the palette paper. You can get Gray Matters palette paper on Amazon. I found that in general that's usually the easiest, but not always the cheapest. Gray Matters is available on Dick Blick. And I think the brush guys still carry it as well. I really like the Gray Matters palette. There are several brands out there. You don't have to get. Just a minute and I'll bring out this one. This one is actually quite good. This one is from Royal Langnickel. And it's a gray as well. And I like the gray because when you're mixing color, it really helps you get the color accuracy. So that's one of the reasons I like it. But it is available. The Gray Matters, you can get them at Dick Blick. They're available in a lot of different places. So there, we've got a little bit of orange. Now, although it's very pretty, it doesn't have the oomph. I like a really highly saturated yellow for sunflowers. But unfortunately, the highly saturated yellows don't cover very well. So I really like, you're welcome, Linda. I really like putting my shading in first. And then I'm going to put a wash over top of my sunflower, all of the petals, with saffron yellow. And this is a highly saturated yellow. It's beautiful, but it doesn't cover very well. So I don't use it for base coating, but look what it does for that sunflower. Look at the difference. One thin coat. It also makes that yellow, that orange flame even hotter. So I like putting this wash of heavily thinned saffron yellow over top of everything. So if you don't have the baby duck, you can use Sunny Day. It will work just as well, but you're still going to come back in and put this wash of saffron over top of everything. It just makes that yellow vivid and vibrant. Just gives you all of that saturation that I absolutely love. And it makes that orange in the petals really vibrant. And look at that. All of those other colors just come to life. Big time. Look at that. So anything that was looking a little bit mousy and a little bit meh, not anymore. Look at that. Nice, bright, vibrant yellow. And the oranges are really jumping. So I'm going to dry this. And then we're going to do the center of this flower. Super easy. So I'm going to take my angled shader and a little bit of lamp black. So we did asphaltum in the center of our sunflower. And I'm going to grab a 1/2 inch angle. So now I need a little wider float. A little bit of lamp black. And we're going to shade the base of this sunflower right here, all the way around in those, up against those pumpkins, just like that. So we need a nice dark shadow. And then there is a center to this flower, so we're going to put sort of a half circle right here. Just like that. Easy peasy. So now we've got a center with lots of texture. And now I'm going to grab a deer foot. I like my deer foots. And I'm going to pick up, this one is a Dynasty 300 series or Decorator series deer foot. This is a stippler. And we're going to use a little bit of asphaltum. I love asphaltum. Use a little bit of asphaltum. I like a lot of that in the brush. Just stipple it onto the brush, like so. And then, I know this is going to sound strange, but I'm going to pick up a little bit of margarita. And we're just going to tap until the two colors blend. And then I'm going to just lightly tap the center. Just want to create a little bit of texture at the outer edge of the center of the sunflower. And then we're going to do the same thing on the outer edge of the center of the sunflower so that it just creates this little look like that. Does not have to be perfect. And you don't need to overwork it. This is all we really need to get. Does Decor make a large bottle of asphaltum? Not nearly large enough. They only have it in the 2-ounce bottle. I wish they had it in an 8-ounce. I go through enough of it that I could justify having it in an 8-ounce bottle. Oh, excellent. Thank you, Darlene. If Sandy McTeer has got a Grey Matters palette on her site, go and check it out. So I'm going to dry this. And then we're going to move to our little white pumpkin over here. Now our little white pumpkin is super simple. It's just shaded with a little bit of asphaltum. And I'm going to use, where did my, oh, there it is. Nope, that's not it. Where did it go? Ah, there. I was looking for my other angled shader. I'm going to give that a soak. So somebody had asked me the other day about brushes and floating. I use 3 different types of brushes when I'm floating, depending on the size or what type of float I'm looking for. One of the things that I really love, I'm a firm believer in having a really sharp chisel edge on an angled shader or a flat shader so that when you're floating you get a nice transition of color. So I'm using this, which is a 1/2 inch Dynasty Black Gold angled shader. And I'm going to use a little bit of asphaltum. These brushes are a little softer than most, and I like them because of the accuracy. So I'm going to put, oh, maybe not. I'm going to put a float of asphaltum on my pumpkins, like so, in those creases. Oh my goodness. Now I've got a little bit of Joe Sonia's Fast Dry Glaze in here. And I'm floating in and around my pumpkin. And I'm going to soften my floats with a mop. And I'm going to use a little bit of Joe Sonia's. I like my Joe Sonia's for keeping my floats transparent. And it also keeps the paint moving smoothly off of the brush. That to me is the more important thing, is how that paint comes off of the brush. If your paint doesn't come off smoothly, you end up with a solid line. Your floats don't look as smooth and clean. So you see how that pumpkin changed to sort of a beige, an even more beigey tone. Yep, Sandy carries my riggers as well. So, and we're going to shade the bottom of each of these segments as well. I like that darker float at the base. It will. And don't forget, all those little spaces at the back there are important. They need to be shaded as well. There we go. So I've got my shading in. I'm going to dry this. And then we're going to move to this leaf here. And I'm going to switch to a 3/8 angle. And we're still using asphaltum. And we need to put in some center veins on this leaf and shade underneath the little leaf in front of it. So need to put a little float of asphaltum in there. And then each of these little bits that are coming off also get a center vein. Just like that. And then don't forget to shade underneath this leaf. There we go. Now, this one's going to look a little rocky for a bit. Because one, base coat's not that pretty. But it will get there, I promise you. There we go. And then we're going to move to this one. And again, I'm using asphaltum. I like this simplified method of putting these center veins in. It doesn't have to be perfect. So we've got center veins in there. Again, it's going to look a little rocky. This is not perfect. Not even close. And then we're going to come over to this one and do the same thing. So, nice center vein. Veins out onto those secondary little leaflets off to the side. Like so. See, I wasn't kidding when I said this part was going to go fairly quickly. I just wanted to get those center veins into the leaves, and then that float to set that leaf back in behind the pumpkin. There we go. Asphaltum gets a bit of a workout for this one. So our little pumpkin here is going to get floated, shaded with asphaltum. So deep into each of those segments, I'm going to put a float of asphaltum. And each float changes how this pumpkin looks. A little bit. Easy peasy. See, what size and kind of mop do I use? The Joe Sonia Fast Dry Glaze is the one that I use. And the mop brush that I use is this one. It's a Dynasty 5/8, and it's in the 400 series. I like this one a lot. I have it in several sizes, but this is the one I tend to grab the most, is the 5/8. Love this brush. You're welcome, Betty. So, whoops-a-daisy. My little pumpkin here. Gonna get that. Okay, I messed that up. There we go. I put that float in the wrong spot. There it is. So, I have divided up each of the segments. And now we're going to tackle our blue pumpkin back here. Now, if you don't have Deep Midnight Blue, you can use Prussian. Either one will work just fine. I don't know where I put my... Oh, there it is. This is Deep Midnight Blue. Prussian blue will work just as well. You just need a really deep, dark blue. And lately have been very partial to Deep Midnight. One of those colors that sat in my paint rack for the longest time. I never used it. Then one day I picked it up because I didn't have something else. And now I'm just completely obsessed with it. So we're going to shade our blue pumpkin back here with either Prussian blue or deep midnight. I love this color. I think Bahama blue is perhaps my favorite all-time Americana color. I know you would expect it to be asphaltum, but I think it's Bahama blue. It's just, there's something about that color. And make sure you take that, float in and around your leaves, down into those little open spaces in there. In behind your other pumpkin. Oops, I think that's a little dark, but it's okay. That's what the mop brush is for, soften all those colors. It's a great tone. There is a method to my madness. I love pairing colors together that work exceptionally well together. Bahama blue is a blue with a touch of green in it, just a little touch. And it's just such a lovely color. And it shades beautifully with a variety of colors, but I found that this deep midnight blue or Prussian blue, they really complement the Bahama blue very, very well. So that's one of the reasons I like to use them. So now we've got our pumpkin shaded. Now I'm going to come in, dry this first. I'm going to come in and we're going to deepen that blue with a little bit of asphaltum. Now, one of the things about asphaltum is that it is actually a heavily yellow-based brown. So it has a tendency to amber things, which is fine as long as it's under control. So I'm going to put a little bit of asphaltum. Wherever I floated that dark blue, I'm going to put a float of asphaltum. And it just helps warm things. I find sometimes, especially with blues, they get a little cold and a little isolated, and I like that little bit of asphaltum just warms things up a little. Just keeps these blues from getting a little too cold. So I'm going to use a little bit of tangerine. I like tangerine. Oh my goodness, and mine is nearly empty. On the contrary, I think mine is empty. Oh, no, there's a little bit. Tangerine is such a nice orange. Little opaque. And we're going to put a little float of it, not even a pretty float, but a little float of it on the left side of the segments of this pumpkin. Just like that. Doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be perfect. Does not have to come to completely to the edge either. That's one of the things. I like leaving a little space on things. Very pretty. A little bit at the tops here of our pumpkin. A little bit back here. You note, it's not perfect. I like the sort of rounded over look. This is just going to lighten our pumpkin a little bit. I love the blue pumpkin. We're going to do something similar down here with a little bit of warm white on our beige pumpkin. It's not a pretty or perfect float. It's just to get a little lightness in there. That's all it is. So we're not looking for a pretty or perfect float. We're just putting a little light in there. Neatness does not count for this. You see where I'm going with it? There we go. So just a little. We're going to play with some neons over top of these that just makes everything pop. So I'm going to dry this. We're going to start highlighting our leaves down here. And the rest of this is going to go pretty quick. There we go. Just so I don't put my fingers in things and stuff. So I've got a little bit of that orange flame for this leaf down here over that red spice. We're going to use that orange flame out to the edges of the leaves like this. I just love that little bit of orange on that red spice. Look at how vibrant it makes it. If you're not comfortable with the 1/2 inch, switch to a smaller angled shader for this. Don't feel you have to stick to a brush shape that you're not comfortable using, or a brush size you're not comfortable using. If you can't get the look you want using that brush, use what works for you. Use what you're comfortable with. So look, see that orange just makes that leaf suddenly take shape. I love it. And this is just our first coat of color, really, over top of that red spice. Love it. And then we're going to use that almondine. Remember the almondine that we used for this pumpkin? We're going to pull that color in. I think it's important that you pull the colors around. I know this one has quite a color palette. Get in there. So a little bit of almondine. And you're going to do the same thing to this leaf that you did to this one. We're going to bring that almondine out here. Look at that. Use it sparingly. Make sure it's thin. It's going to be a little chalky. Might even look a little white. That's okay. Soften it a little. Pretty, pretty. I like this little bit of white, and you're going to see why in just a minute. This lighter value on this leaf, because we're going to come back in with a little bit of that saffron. Remember the saffron that we used, that wash over top of this? Watch what it does to this leaf. So a little bit of saffron. It's thinned. You're not using it full strength. Our leaf is going to get very lively. Just with that little bit of almondine underneath. Look at how our leaf comes to life. That little bit of almondine underneath acts almost like a primer. Gives that orange something to pop off of. So look at our leaf. What started out as a beige leaf with a bunch of white on it, now suddenly it has some life to it. That's why I'm a fan of using transparent layers of color over top of things. It just makes everything lively. So we have this muted catastrophe over here. this one that we base coated with, first with white, and then we put a coat of that raw cyan over top of it. Not a super pretty color, but we're going to bring in a little bit of that canyon orange. Remember the orange that we put in this pumpkin? We're going to use a little bit of that canyon orange. If I can find it. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Nope. That's not it. There it is. A little bit of canyon orange. We're going to float a little bit of that in. And as odd as it may sound, then we're going to go in and highlight it with some antique green. I know that sounds really strange, but. So, little bit of that canyon orange on the highlight areas. I love this canyon orange. It's such a pretty color. But it brings this leaf to life. It's not a super bright color, but it does work really well for this. So look at that. There's your highlight color. That little bit of canyon orange is going to pop this leaf. Look at that. So a little bit of canyon orange. There's that highlight. It's just opaque enough to give you a really nice pop. And it still gives the leaf a little bit of a zing at the tips. Look at that. So we have nice texture, nice color. That little bit of orange out there just does wonders. But the really surprising part is what happens to this when we start using a little bit of green in it. So I'm going to dry that. So, antique green. It always surprises people the ways you can use this color. And I love it, especially on something like this. So, I'm going to use a little bit of that antique green. And I'm going to go over top of this orange with it. It's an odd mix, I know, but it does wonderful things for this. So it takes on a really unique tone. You know, the leaves that haven't quite completely changed, they still have a little touch of color left in them, a little touch of the green. They haven't gone completely autumnal. I like to pull that little bit of that green tone into the leaf. Right out to the edge, down the highlight. Don't forget to put it in the highlight areas. That little bit of green, and it's going to carry the green that we put over top of it. We're going to pop some neon green in there. And this gives those leaves that not quite fully fall look. They fell off the tree, but they weren't completely done yet. And I love that idea that that color just fighting to stay vibrant. So there's that unique greenish tone with that orange undertone. So now we get to pop into there with some neons, and we're going to bring neons, all of them in. I have some brilliant torrid orange, which is that brilliant hot orange. We have a little thermal green. Love this color. And then we have this one, which is scorching yellow. I just figured if you're going to go big, right? Betty, this is a Ranger heated craft tool. And it's a heat gun. It dries paint very quickly. And it's very quiet. I love it. It's perfect. So, scorching yellow. Who'd have thunk it, right? Neon yellow. It's that in your face, burn out your retinas yellow. So I'm going to use a 3/8 angle, and I want you to watch the sunflower here. We're going to use this as a little bit of a highlight at the tip of the petals. And watch what happens to this. Just out at the tips, I want this yellow to really pop off of that red. And this scorching yellow does it. I just love that this is so in your face. I love it. A little more contemporary than this rustic country would imply, but I really love the heat that this yellow gives to the sunflowers. Look how vibrant that is. It's just incredible. So there's our sunflower. So now we need a little bit of that neon green. I love this. That thermal green is one of my favorites. I love this color. So we're going to bring a little of that green onto our leaves. And I put it over the lightest areas. Where those light colors are, that highlight tone that we put in, that's where I like to put it. I like that it's just going to give it, a little more oomph. So on your highlighted areas, out at the points of the leaves, little float, doesn't need to be much. These colors are very transparent. So you need to have them over top of something with a lighter base. So, which is why I like that lighter green, that more chalky green for this type of thing, because that just gives them a nice base for that punch that we need. So wherever I put that lighter color, I'm going to put a little bit of that neon. And just look at how vibrant. It just makes all of these colors pop. So vibrant, so fun. Look at that. I love it. So then we have this, which is that torrid orange, that in-your-face orange. We're going to use that on the pumpkins, but before I forget, remember our mushy, weird color palette that we have on this leaf down here, where you have that mixture of green and orange? We're going to put a little bit of this neon out on the tips of our leaves and on the highlighted areas of our leaves. I've got too much moisture in my brush. There we go. A little bit. Highlight areas. Highlight areas. This is where that antique green makes all the difference. I've just messed up that point there, but that's okay. That little bit of antique green gives us a base for all of this. Whoopsie. And I love that that neon green does this. Qu'est-ce que c'est?
No. It's heavy.
It's heavy?
You're all getting Facebook again.
So now have a look at that leaf. So we have this real punch of green. I love that it gives us that variation in there. So I'm going to come down here, pull a little of that neon onto that base leaf. Go right over top of that orange, go right over top of that green, and it gives you that sort of murky color palette. There we go. So now, remember we put that tangerine on there. I love that we get to do this. A little bit of torrid orange. Oopsie daisy. I swear that stuff burn your retinas out. So, torrid orange. It's an in-your-face orange. Right over top of where that tangerine was. That little bit, torrid orange. Such a great color. I love it. There's our torrid orange. Look at that. So now we've got a pumpkin. And I'm going to switch to a smaller angle. And we're going to bring some of that torrid orange out onto this leaf. Such a great color. Somebody wants to grow blue and white pumpkins. So there is that little bit of torrid orange. Look what it does for that leaf. This leaf just gets so lively. There we go. Et voila. Nice and lively. So look at how bright all of those colors get with just a little bit of neon. So now we're about ready to start all of the finishing stuff for this. So we're going to put highlights on all of our pumpkins. So I'm going to dig out one of my favorite dry brushes, if I can find it. I was looking for a dome blender. The devil. I wanted to work with a dome blender. Or in this case, a point blender. This is a Dynasty IPC point blender. You can get these at thebrushguys.com. IPC stands for ink, pastel, and chalk. And part of that program is this brush. And it has a nice little point on it, but it's awesome for dry brushing. So I'm going to use a little bit of warm white. And you're going to load this brush the same way you would any dry brush. You're going to pick up some paint. You're going to scumble it on your palette until the brush is nearly dry. And then you're going to apply it the same way. So it's a nice light touch. Just like that. Now, I think this one might be a bit too soft. So I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch to a 1/4 inch stencil brush. And I'm going to use the edge of, that's better. Just wasn't getting anything out of the soft one today. So same method applies, just pick up your white paint. And then you just blot it on paper towel or shop towel until you get it dry enough to apply, and then you just brush on your highlights. Don't forget that those little pieces back there get that same treatment. You can't forget them. And I like to have my highlight at the upper left, so I put the focus of my highlight up here. I'm going to do the same thing. Oh, goodness. I picked up some neon on my brush. Not good. Now I have to get a clean one. And a dry one. Even more important. Can't dry brush with a wet brush. So, a little bit of, there we go. Now we're cooking with gas. A little bit of a dry brush highlight. There we are. There we go. And then our last one to do is our big blue pumpkin over here. Oops. Good grief. You're snuffling. Poor Renee. Poor Renee is snuffling. Oh my goodness. My brush isn't quite dry. There we go. I'm listening to Renee snuffle. Cinderella pumpkins. Oh, he'll be fine. I haven't killed him yet, so, you know, virus doesn't stand a chance. Although I will say he does not get sick very often. So I don't mind too much if he asks for star soup. There we go. So we've got a nice little highlight on all of our pumpkins. And now we're going to add a nice little highlight to our sunflower. I'm going to use a little bit of warm white. I like doing this. I like, on those highlighted sections, I like little scattered little dots. I don't like to get too heavy-handed with it because I find it does stand out quite a lot. But whatever you do, just make sure you bring them out past the edges of that center onto the petals a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot. But if you extend it past, it just softens the center of the flower a little. So now we're down to our liner brush. Now I'm going to use a 10-aught extra long detail liner because that's my favorite liner. I'm pretty sure I still have one in here. There it is. 10-aught Dynasty Micron. It's my favorite liner brush. Just works really, really well. 10-aught, 5-aught, 15-aught, they all work great. Oh, Debbie B. Easton is sick too. She's got a cold. Yeah. So, all of the little details that I pop into this, I do some with a paintbrush and I do some with my gel pen. So for the sunflower, we're going to use a little bit of that baby duck that we used at the very beginning for our base color. And this is going to be our detail color. Sometimes I'll add a little bit of warm white to it if I find it's a little too blasé. But I think this is good. So a little bit So each of these petals, remember the little space when I shaded it? That little narrow space when I shaded each petal? We're going to start right there, and then we're going to come out past the edge of the petal. And I like that squiggly line. And I do that to all of my petals. I like that sort of the irregularities of it, I guess. It just softens the look of the flower. Somebody told me recently it just makes them look fancy. I don't know from fancy, but I just like the look. But it does soften the edges of the petals and it looks less hard-edged. Just makes them pretty. So I'm bringing that up so you can see it. It's just a little softer, a little more delicate. Tracy Morrow squiggles. Yes, it's a Tracy Morrow squiggle. That's a good definition. I'll go with that, Charmaine. So for the edges of the leaves, you're going to use the Margarita, which is our highlight color on our leaves, and you're going to do the same thing. And again, I'm not looking to hard edge outline them. I like the little squiggly outline. It can go off of the petal or off the leaf. It can come past the tip. That's fine. Do it a little heavier if it doesn't, like mine just completely messed up there for a sec. And you can repeat it. Doesn't have to be exactly in the same place. Doesn't matter. Now, the little leaves, I bring the stems up so that they join right at the base of the leaf, and I do the same thing to them. I like the squigglies. It's also an opportunity to add a little curlicue to the tip of the leaf if you like, which I do. And then I use those little vines and tendrils that I put in. I do those with this as well. They don't have to be perfect. But if you're comfortable with a good liner brush, you can do all sorts of wonderful things. There we go. So we've got vines and tendrils in. We're going to put a little highlight on our pumpkin. Oop, almost forgot this leaf. There we go. There we are. Now there's nothing to stop you from throwing a little bit of neon green into that margarita if you really want it to pop. So we've got those little vines and tendrils in. Look how pretty. Nice and delicate. Everything's connected. All of the little leaves are connected. The stems. Oops, missed one. I missed this one. There we go. So I'm going to dry this really well. And then I'm going to use my gel pen to do the final detailing on this. Oh, I've got a little bit of fast dry glaze in everything right now. So now that you've done all of that detailing, you can go back in, and if there's any shadows that need deepening, now is the time. I think I'm happy with them as they are, but I'm going to grab my gel pen, because this is where I have fun, because I love my gel pen. I like putting little stitch marks on my pumpkin. Nice little irregular lines in all of those creases, like so. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be anything more than what you want them to be. But I do like the little stitch marks. I'm kind of partial to stitch marks. You know, little line, little stitch. It's all good. Do your pumpkins. And I like the irregularities. I like those little odds and sods. They don't have to be perfect. Just like that. Those little lines define everything. They also will help you, you know, perhaps make some little flaws you might perceive as being a little less obvious. And then one of the things that appeals to me about this piece is that it's not perfect. I like the imperfections. I like the minutia, those little details that we put in. They don't have to be absolutely solid. I like squiggly lines. So even at the outside of these leaves and whatnot, the lines aren't perfect. They're not absolutely on the surface. They just help create a little more dimension. I like sketchy. Sketchy works. There we go. Especially in this case, sketchy really works. This was never intended to be that perfectly toll painted piece. It's meant to have a rustic appearance, an imperfect appearance. So there, we've got some lines in. I like doing this, going around the center of my sunflower with a sketchy line right at the edges. So it's a little bit on the leaf. Don't forget to add a few little textures to the base of the petals either. I'm a fan of the 1, 2, 3. Little cross-hatchy lines there. Works for me. And I like sketchy. And we got one more pumpkin. Now, if you prefer, you could do this with a liner brush. If you would rather do it with a little bit of thinned asphaltum or a heavily thinned lamp black. I'm a fan of my gel pen because it makes such a nice fine line. And I just love how it looks. And I kind of like that sketchy look where you just sort of, it could pass for being quilted. I kind of like that. So we got leaves. We got all our little sketchy details in, like so. And then I'm going to take my liner brush and a little bit of thinned asphaltum, maybe a little bit of thinned almondine. Whoa. And I'm going to put a little thin highlight on the left side, upper left side of each letter. Just a little. It's very fine. It's just going to help make this lettering stand out a little bit. And we are almost done. We've got a little bit of work to do yet, but again, I'm not worrying too much. Fine little highlight. It is a very fine one and not too bright. It's just enough to make that lettering pop a little bit. And then we have a little border to put on. I can find my pens. There they are. I'm going to use one of my Posca pens for this. It's not going to be perfect, doesn't need to be. So I'm going to grab my 6-inch ruler. And my favorite Posca pen. Might need to get another one. And we're going to put a border about maybe a little less than 1/4 of an inch from the edge. With a white Posca pen. I'm going to make sure it's dry before I do this next part. It does not have to be really bright. It's just a border. And I'm going to move it along over there. Oop, might be a little too narrow. There we go. And our little border is going to extend down till it stops just in front of the leaf there. And just before that little vine. I like a little dot at the end. It's just me. There we are. So we've got our little border on. Rene's going to load up the wheel, if he hasn't done so already. And we're going to thin out a little bit of warm white for this, because I like this. And we're going to spatter generously, because I like generous. First with warm white. And then with a little bit of asphaltum. I like my asphaltum. Little bit of asphaltum. And then lastly, we're going to do it with a little bit of lamp black. Because I haven't messed up my manicure enough. So a little bit of lamp black. Now, as I said, you can do as much or as little of this as you like. I really like the distressed and rustic look, so I'm going full bore with lots of each, because I like it that way. Now, I will take this into the garage and I will hit it with about 2 to 3 light coats of DecoArt matte spray just to seal everything in nice. Once I have it sealed down, then I'll varnish it with DecoArt's Ultra Matte Varnish. I prefer to spray everything because I use so many different things. I use paint pens, I use ink, I use whatever. If I hit it with matte spray, then I eliminate the worry of making a mess of things when I go ahead and I put the varnish on. So there we go. Nice and dry. That is farm fresh pumpkins. Fun piece to paint. Lots to do. Lots to do. So Rene's got the wheel loaded. I'm going to grab my sweater because now I'm cold again. First I was warm, now I'm cold. Oh, there they are. Lots of fun.
For some reason, you don't want to play nice today.
It doesn't want to play nice today. I'm so glad you. Do I do my nails myself? Yes, I do. I'm not going to take any credit for them, though.
There we go.
So this is a lot of fun to paint. And it looks so very different once you varnish it. All of the colors come to life, including all of those fabulous neons. Everything gets really, really bright. So there it is. Firm Fresh pumpkins. Fun. Boys, oh boys, that wheel looks loaded today.
207.
Nice. So 207, 3 of you are going to win. We have a lovely little bag full of Tombow goodies in there for you this month. Plus we have some brushes. I believe it's Dynasty Black Gold that's in there. So we have lots of goodies. I sent out another few just because packages this week because, well, just because. Some of you have been really kind to friends and acquaintances on Facebook and to members of the group and to members of Tracy Morrow Live. So I like to send out a little something every once in a while, just because. So if you get one, mark just because. It's because you did something kind for someone. Alrighty. Come on. Kim Holcomb. That's a new name. So Kim, if you aren't familiar, please go over to my website at tracymoreau.net and click on the little speech bubble in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send us your shipping information so that we can get your goodies out to you as soon as possible. You okay?
It's clogged again. Damn.
He's going to be fun this weekend.
I have to work tomorrow. One more. Or 2 more.
2 more. Dawn Lavelle.
Hey.
Dawn's a regular. She's with us almost every week.
Yep.
Hmm.
Done the bell.
And the last one.
It's a big name.
Is a good name. Linda Neesmith Stanton. She paints those beautiful pumpkins. She does. She paints the most gorgeous pumpkins. So, Linda, hop over to the website at tracymoreau.net. Click on the little speech bubble in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send us your shipping information, please, so that we can get your goodies out to you as soon as possible. So to those of you who have been donating to our Feed the Puppers Fund or Help the Puppers Fund, thank you so much. And especially today, you guys have been incredibly generous. Thank you so very much for that in helping us look after pups at our local shelter. We really do appreciate it. And so do they. Next weekend, I'm thinking we're painting a bumblebee. So it'll be bee themed, queen bee themed to be exact. So pattern should be up probably tomorrow afternoon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And come and join us next Saturday as you do. Same time, same bat channel. We're here at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time every Saturday with another live class. And in the meantime, everybody stay safe, stay healthy. And stay cool because it's a hot one out there. So
We're getting rain this afternoon.
oh goody, maybe it'll cool things off a little bit. So, all right, everybody, you have a great weekend and don't forget to stay safe. Mwah. We love you. See you again soon.
Pet your dog.
And pet your dog. Bye.